through, and I'm assuming we may still have a few folks kind of trickle on, but we are now 5 minutes into the time, and knowing that we do have a hard stop at an hour. So let me just be the first one to welcome everyone officially to the class. It's so great, as Daniel was saying, to see everybody again. Those of you who we got to, some of you, well, it actually seems like a long time, but I guess it was only a few months. But in other cases, it's great to see familiar faces after many years. As I think just everyone knows, my name is Luke Tayloride, and I'm the co-instructor of the course, along with my boss and also happens to be my father, Daniel. And so this is always really exciting because this course in particular is part of a conversation that at least Daniel and I have been having as long as I can remember it. And it really goes back to the whole purpose of where seed scale came from. The original task force, as I think everybody knows, you took ACC601. Seed scale came from a charter and a charge from UNICEF. But the specific charge was, why do certain projects sustainably go to scale? The question was the elusive quest and goal of why some projects are able to achieve large scale impact, lasting impact at scale. That's the real kind of elusive, ghost of development. That's the mythical goal that we're all really striving for. And out of that research, we got the whole seed process that you all really learned and mastered in 601. But seed really sets the stage for what we were really trying to answer, what that task force was really trying to answer, which was, how do you do this at scale? And specifically, this course used to be called Going to Scale. You may hear Daniel and I slip up and call this course the wrong thing throughout, because we're both getting used to, after taught this course at least 10 times. But we now have a new name, which is Taking Impact to Scale. But that's really important, because that's what we're trying to do in this course. We're trying to really not just think about, how to make things big, but how to make sure there's large scale impact. And I like to think, one way to think about this course is, even though it comes second in the process, right? It comes after. You need to take seed before you can really take this scale course. But this course is still an introductory course. It's an introductory course into a very complex subject. It's an introductory course into a subject that we at Future Generations, I'm lucky enough to get to work with the Future Generations Global Network on a daily basis, our many partners throughout the world. And I can tell you that this topic of how to take impact to scale, what we struggle with daily. So we're going to be really learning an interesting topic here. But it is then something that I promise you'll be struggling with the rest of your career. Because scale, just the notion and concept of scale, is overwhelming. It can feel overwhelming. Think about, in this current era, how overwhelmed the system is just by distributing a vaccine, right? If we were doing that at a seed level, we know what to do. If we're trying to isolate COVID in a local community, we know what to do. But trying to do it on a global scale has caught the world flat-footed. And I think it's a great example of how we can take what would have been a very basic localized problem, and we can answer that question, just like we can often answer what needs to happen at seed. But when we start to think about scale and the complexity of it, it becomes very, very hard and overwhelming. But that's why this course is so much fun for us, because we get to now talk about that and really think about some of these concepts together. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Rosie, who will be your primary coach and resource throughout the semester, to go over some housekeeping items. But once again, everybody, welcome, and I'm really looking forward to exploring this very interesting topic with you all throughout the semester.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Luke. Thank you all for being here. It is such a cool opportunity to be meeting with you all and your various communities around the world. I was in your shoes maybe 3 years ago now. And so as Luke said, I am your teaching assistant for this semester. I was working with our faculty in the Introduction to Seed Scale course last semester, but this is my first time working in this course. And I will be your go-to person if you have any questions on accessing the material on Moodle, on getting issues with Zoom, or also with your lab and other online assignments. So welcome. And I've already been in touch with several of you and looking forward to working with you a little bit more on during office hours and elsewise. So I'm going to give you a brief look in our course as it stands in Moodle. So let me share my screen. Hopefully this is not new for most of you, but I know that some of you have been having difficulty accessing. So here's our course, Taking Impact to Scale. And I know that this graphic is familiar to many of you already, having read the Seed Scale books and hopefully taken our quiz for this week. And when you get in here, you'll see that this is our Zoom room and Zoom information. You're all here, so that's good. But please email me if you ever have difficulties with that. This course information and communications module is very important. So that's what I want to show you all now if you haven't looked at it yet. This is for all those things that you might need during the course of the semester. The first one being our course syllabus that we'll take a look at in just a moment. But you see here, our Zoom meetings will always be at this time, which is 9 a.m. Eastern time, or 1400 Universal time. And you will be responsible for making sure that you know when that is in your relative time zone. So there is a resource that is in the syllabus. And if you have doubts, let me know, but it definitely can be a little tricky, especially as we get later on in the semester and our time zone changes in the US with daylight savings time. So we really, really encourage you to attend class as much as you can. That said, we know that some of you might have standing conflicts in your work and other schedules. So I want to draw your attention to our attendance makeup policy. As it stands, and this is about the same throughout all of our courses at Future Generations starting this semester, that if you need to miss a class Zoom session, the number one thing is do please, if you can, if it's not an emergency, write to me just so that I know why you're missing, because I will be taking attendance every class session. And then you will always have the option to make up that participation credit by watching the recording for that day's Zoom session, which will be posted here in just 24 hours for our first class. You'll watch that recording, and then you will be expected to make a post on our course forum, which is right here. I see several of you have already introduced yourself, which is wonderful. Please do that if you haven't. And then that way, we will get the opportunity to make up your point. make sure that we'll know that you're understanding the material and we can engage with each other asynchronously in that way. I know that there's a special category for some of you who really, except for maybe this first session, cannot attend on a normal basis at all. So it is really important that you communicate that with me because there's just a small group of you who we will be forming into a breakout group that you will be able to work together throughout the semester, doing this forum activity, of course, but also there's a possibility to schedule some special sessions that I'll facilitate specifically around the times that you'll be working on your 3 big community lab projects. So do email me about that. This is our course forum here. And I want to alert you to our office hours. So I'll be hosting office hours from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday. That's 1700 to 1800 Universal Time. I'll also be holding this space here that we're in now for about 30 minutes directly after class every Wednesday. So if you have just, a quick question, I'm here. I know the faculty will also stay here for for as long as they can with their schedules. And then you could always also schedule another time slot with me too, if those Monday office hour sessions don't work. So here's my email, rosie.lynch@future.edu, and I'm accessible and I want to be here to help you. So with that, let me just briefly show you, this is our syllabus accessible from that module we were just looking at. And I hope that most of you are all pretty familiar with the way our current curriculum works at this point at Future Generations. But basically there's 3 learning streams that we'll be working on, and your learning depends on all this, and your grade will depend on all this, and that is community labs, online, and face-to-face learning. So if we just take a quick look at page 5, this is your schedule of all things, and you'll see that will be due. And right now we've just opened up the first half of that. So the first 8 weeks of class before our spring break. And you can see everything you'll be responsible for, as well as an overview walking you through key activities week by week. But I just wanted to show you here how your final grade will be determined. So those 3 learning streams are all equally important, but they're not weighted exactly the same. We've got about 30 points of online coursework, so that will be a little quiz like you did this week, or sometimes a guided lesson that takes you through both reading material and quizzes your understanding of it. Face-to-face, which includes, of course, your attendance participation, 1 point per class, plus an additional about 10 points worth of participation in and beyond just showing up, right? So showing that you've come prepared, being engaged, sharing live, sharing in chat, as well as on the forum. And we've got a formula to calculate those. And then lastly, your community lab assignments. So those are worth a total of 45 points. And so that's, the biggest chunk, because it's really important that we want you to walk away from this class knowing how to do seed scale and specifically scaling up. So just again, want to alert you to some finer points of the attendance. I've walked you through that now. I hope we're all good, but check it out if you have any doubts and let me know. We've got our attendance policy regarding late assignments. So our policy is that if you are turning in late assignments, please turn them in. We always want you to turn them in. But to make it fair for everyone else, we can mark down the total grade for that assignment by 10% for each week they're not received. But that said, we really, it's about learning. And so we're always happy to look at your work We'll all review your work, and you might be hearing from me if you start.
My
Oops.
PP.
Please be sure to mute yourself if there's background noise. It is very cute background noise though. Okay, so I think that about covers everything that I wanted to hit. Let me just make sure
Rosie,
you know.
Matt,
So,
Matt has a question. That's
oh, do you've got a question, Matt?
in the chat window. Just look in the chat window. It's relevant to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt, I think, do you mean specifically like, is there a reason why not to go forward and do lessons or read chapters?
Yeah, just if there maybe there isn't benefits to maybe engaging in material before to a certain extent.
Well, if you are engaged and feeling motivated, buddy, go ahead and read all you want. That's why it's there. We also have optional, I think, some additional optional reading material that's just kind of with the course at large. I think the only kind of danger would be that obviously a lot of the reading is going to be integrated into course discussions. So just make sure as you're doing that, you are taking notes or being able to re-review before the actual course. Just because, if you were to sit down, next week, you happen to have 2 snow days and do the whole term's worth of reading, you might have trouble, articulating some of the points, here once we get to week 8. But certainly, no, and especially if you happen to know, the whole, as I've said, as you've all heard me say previously, that the real area where I've seen great students just get into trouble is time management, and it's time management with your personal life, your professional life, and your academic life. It's a lot, and we know that. So certainly, that's one reason why it's out there and it's available, is so that you all can, if you have a block where you really want to be chipping away at some work, we encourage that.
Yes. So yeah, feel free to look ahead. In fact, a lot of times in our weekly overviews, it will, will alert you to the possibility, like your lab will be due in several weeks and here's what you should be working. So with that, you'll see that you've got your first of 3 community lab assignments for this course posted to week 1, because we'd like for you to be able to have the option to look ahead and know what's coming and plan what that engagement in your community will look like. So feel free to take a look if you haven't already. And I just wanted to end on one final note that in this course, like other courses you've likely taken with us, we will be working with breakout groups again, and you'll likely meet that group of people tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, next week when we meet again. And that will be your peer support group to learn together, share what you're doing. And yeah, that's it. So
Great.
I'm going to, unless there's other questions, I'm going to pass the mic back to Daniel, who will walk us through our first lesson for the course.
So I have 2 administrative follow-up points on what Rosie just said. The first is just, as always, Rosie said it, but I want to reiterate it. Communication is key. We can be very flexible. We're here. We are not doing this to grade or assess you or be a police officer. We're here to help and be a supportive learning coaches. But that is very, very hard to do if we are not in regular communication. And so certainly for those of you who are having trouble or with coming to class and that sort of thing, just give us a little bit of a heads up. The other point also comes back to communication, and Rosie touched on it when she was talking about the allocation of the grades. And she was mentioning that we have these other points that we give out on a discretionary basis, based on when we observe or note for students, that you are actively participating in the course, not just showing up. And I want to be really clear. We give those points out just for acknowledging, or when we see that you have spoken up, that you've responded, that you've cited a classmate. We do not ever grade the quality of what you're saying. So my point is, it is better to speak up with an idea than feel like you need to wait and say something that sounds really, really smart. You're not going to get any extra points for sounding really, really smart, but you will get a point for speaking up. So I just want to say that in terms of that's how that participation thing works. And Daniel, with that, over to you.
Yeah. What Luke is saying is that this course is all about human energy. We want to see your human energy. And sometimes we make mistakes and we learn from them. But let me just say, isn't this amazing? There are 8 countries represented right now. There are 10 countries represented in this course who will be logging in on the recording session. There are 18 different professions being represented in this class. People doing different things, amazingly different things. When you were in college, yes, there were different people in the class, but more or less, you had all just finished secondary school. You were figuring out there was a lot of homogeneity in your class. Together right now, we are the world. And I, for one, being an old man, am so excited to see this world coming together, because we are living in another world right now that is fighting each other, that is afraid, that is suffering a pandemic. And so the question really behind this class is representative of the larger question of taking impact to scale. But let me just pause and say that in the forum session for this class, I want to thank everybody who's already introduced themselves and introduced who they are, what they do, where they are. I encourage each of you to take a moment and introduce yourself in the forum, maybe include a photograph or something so that we get to know our wonderful diversity that is in this class. Luke and Rosie and I talked about starting this class with everybody just introducing themselves, but the problem is that we only say one sentence. So say a little bit more in your forum introduction, and then read everybody else's forum so that we get to meet each other and start to come together as one class from around the world in this wonderful diversity that we are. So let me just say welcome. I am so excited. I'm looking forward to the next 16 weeks together. And with that, let me just go in and explain what we're going to be doing. Can somebody give me a hands up to make sure that this is coming through? Okay. Let me. Okay. So the course is taking impact to scale. What do we mean by that? And for those of you, by the way, who have a notepad or computer open, there are 2 or 3 slides here that I'm going to stop and say, I hope you take note of what's on these slides, because there's several slides here that will be sort of little roadmaps through the rest of the course. And you just might want to write down a couple key ideas, because this is the big introduction. But this first slide is simply explanation. Taking impact to scale. What does taking mean? It means you will learn how to do this. Okay, how to do this. That's what this course is about. You're going to learn how to do it. And what you're going to learn is the impact issue of applied community development. And what is applied community development? First, it's applied. It's doing. This is not a theory course. You are going to be getting a lot of theory, but all the theory is going to be headed towards letting you get the skill of doing it. And where you're going to be doing it is with something you already have. You don't need this community. You've got your community. And what you're going to be doing there is helping that community improve the quality of your lives. That is sharing their potential together. They already have that potential. They don't know how to use it. You're going to be helping them. And what they will get from that is development, which is better lives going forward. The core idea there is one of energy. Better lives going forward. That's what little you, wherever you are in the world, just like little me, we're going to do this big thing. And it's called taking impact to scale. And what is scale? Scale, you're going to be hearing this again and again and again, as presented in this class with the concepts of seed scale, is a feedback loop, where when you improve somebody's life, that's a qualitative thing, it creates a quantitative output of more people. If I offered you some ice cream, we'd all say, yes, please give me some ice cream. That's quality. My life is improving. And so suddenly more people would say, I want some ice cream too. And then everybody was eating ice cream. And then somebody says, oh, wait a minute. I want some vegetables. I want some meat. And so the quality of the meal starts to change. And this creates what we call as the feedback loop. So that's what this course is about. Now, folks, this is where I suggest you pull out your paper and write something down. Because what in the world is scale?
Well, and we will be posting this PowerPoint at the
Right,
end.
we're posting this PowerPoint.
Don't worry, folks. You will get access to the PowerPoint as well. But do take notes, because Daniel's saying extra.
I'm saying extra. But here's the point. This is one of those things that means 7 different things. So if you think you've got scale figured out, I'm sorry, folks. It's got 7 meanings, at least 7 that I'm aware of, and there are probably another 7 that I don't know. Meaning number 1 is what most of your governments think about scale. It's called growing the gross national product, where you speed up your economy and the growth of wealth makes everything else in your economy improve. So if you can grow the money supply in a country, that creates resources, money, that causes health to improve, education to improve, life to improve. Okay? That's economic growth going to scale and causing life to improve. Okay, wait. The United Nations said, and we'll get to this more in it, I'm going to describe each of these a little bit more in detail. It's not that simple. There are 17 different goals. It isn't just economic development. There's 17 things we have to do. And they've articulated this as the Sustainable Development Goals. Poverty is one thing, hunger is another, gender is another, the climate's another, education's another. And the amazing thing, which we'll talk about a little bit more, is that this is the only thing in the last 50 years that every country in the world has agreed to. We haven't agreed to human rights. We haven't agreed to the Convention of the Children. It's astonishing. But we've all agreed that there are 17 goals that we should be pursuing. But wait a minute. Then there's another approach, which is called human development. And that says, wait, this SDGs, these are big national goals. The economy, that's a big thing. But what really matters is people, the whole person. And how do we advance the whole person? And the way we do that isn't by the government doing it, it's by opening the potential of the person. Whoa. We're going to magnify the potential of a person. Now, how do we do that? Well, one answer is additive, the additive approach. we're going to take one community and we're going to really work hard with that community. We're going to listen to the people. We're going to see what's there. We're going to bring in all the fancy anthropologists we can have. So we have a human-centered approach and we will advance. And then once we get that community done, because we're good people, we're going to go on and do another one and another one and another one. That's adding 1 + 1 + 1, and we will go to scale maybe in 1,000 years. Then there's another approach. It's called the blueprint approach, which says, we'll get the world's experts together, okay? We'll go to our universities and get the world's get the experts for our country, and they'll design a plan. We call that the blueprint. And then we're going to take that plan all over the country. And that will scale up. And it will be delivered by the experts, and it'll be supported by the government with its policies. And somebody, I don't know who, but we're needy people, so somebody's going to give us resources to make it all happen. Oh, maybe we'll go talk to Bill Gates and he'll give us some money, or the UN, and we'll take the blueprint to scale. Then there's another approach, which is called the explosion approach. And something happens. It's called COVID, a pandemic, and all of a sudden we're exploded. And so we have to come up with an explosion response. Oh, let's all get a vaccine. So to the one explosion, you get another explosion, and the two equal each other. And wonderful. Everything's come back to normal. Life is going forward. And then there's a seventh approach, which is called the biological, where things grow from where they are. We plant a seed in that local environment and it grows. And it fits that place with what it has. Now, here's the situation. Let's go to the economic growth approach. In the 19th century, middle of the 1800s, people realized that all of a sudden things were changing radically. We lived in an agrarian society of farming, and things were pretty much been going on the same way they had for centuries. And some of you live in this type of a world still today. But people realized that suddenly something was happening and life was changing. Life was going to a scale. So they said, economic development. Wealth is being created. And as wealth is being created, many aspects of life are jumping forward. People are learning how to live in a complex and different way, and money is allowing all this to happen. With money, everything is possible. And this has become the traditional view of scaling up. Governments and businesses, the big forces in your society, are shaping policies to grow wealth. And they measure this by GDP, which is the gross domestic product. They calculate how much everything is worth in your economy with the gross domestic product at the household level. And they add it all together in a big long column. And then that's called wealth, the wealth of your country. And if you can grow that wealth, you're going to get large impact. You're going to take impact to scale. Karl Marx said, yes, that wealth is growing. It's called labor. And some people are being taken advantage of. And labor needs to organize so that it can resist the forces of policies and business that are taking advantage of them. But other people said, money? Is money even real? Isn't money funny? What is this stuff? Well, what we have now understood is that money is a proxy for fossil fuels. And that in money, fundamentally, what we're talking about is an energy, it's a representation of energy that has come from energy sources in the past, millennia ago, that are embodied in fossils. And it was the introduction of fossil energy in the mid 1800s that caused the explosion of wealth as we started to use that energy source. And it definitely worked. The world leaped forward using resources from past. Okay, and it has had a major contribution. Now let's look at the idea of human development. Human development. We were talking about wealth before and money. Human development says, wait a minute, development must be for people. It's not for countries. What does it matter if the country gets changes? What matters if a people change? It's not even for communities. It's for people and their wholeness. It's for people not as an individual, but as an aggregate. Okay? And it's not just an aggregate of numbers of people, it's the wholeness of people, the quality of their life. That's what matters. That's what human development said. And they said this differs from economic development. Economic development is measuring production. It's like economic development is measuring what's coming out of the factory. And that is being used to produce wealth. And then the question is, who owns that wealth? Well, lo and behold, as you did, the people who own the wealth, the people who own the factories, and then the workers in the factory take a little bit. So with the idea of human development, a whole new school of thought grew. It was especially led by economists from the global South. And it challenged the philosophy and the school of thought from economists from the global North. And it said GDP exploits the poor. So we need to do something. We need to have a different school of thought that advances the people. And there was a brilliant, genius insight here. It came from a Pakistani by the name of Mahbub Haq. And he said, the key here is expanding choices. If we can create an environment that expands choices for people, then people then have efficacy, they have ownership of their lives, and it decentralizes the process of development to the diversity of their people and the diversity of their needs by expanding choices. And it gathers what they share in common because it's all diversified. And then it's coming together and it is expanding their potential to act together. Now, those of you who have taken seed course, which is everybody here knows immediately what I'm talking about, the definition of community is a group of people who share something in common and have the potential to act together. This is at the center of human development, and I'll be circling about it. But here's the point. If you want to know where seed scale came from, the idea of this course, the method and the system of thinking of this course, it came from human development. And the readings next week, we have a reading from the Human Development Report that you're going to be doing. Now, the Human Development Report has come out every year since 1989. It's a very interesting report, document. It comes out every year. And it has this distinguishing feature. First of all, it's scholarship. They have studied the facts. They've brought together the world's smartest, most experienced people every year to write. But they represent all the nations of the world. They represent the global South, the global North, the global middle, the global under, the global upper. So in the Human Development Report, we really have the annual voice of all the world's people. I can assure you it's boring as hell to read. You're going to be reading some pages. in the next reading assignment, and you'll say, oh my gosh, where are the funny stories? Where are the pictures? I don't want to see more graphs and more numbers. But here's the message, folks. Listen, it's the world's people speaking. It's the world's scholars coming together and trying to say, and so this year, the part that you will be reading out of the global development, the Human Development Report, is all the people's world of the world have come together and said, we're in the Anthropocene. We, the people, have changed the world. Get ready, have fun with this reading assignment. It's waiting for you as soon as this class is over. Now, what is this stuff that's coming? Well, the UNDP, which writes the Human Development Report, says, okay, where we're going to. Well, we agree that it's not just money. And as I mentioned, they have created the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. And as I mentioned, every country of the world has agreed to this. And what they've tried to do is that they've agreed to everything. So there's hunger, there's climate change, there's gender equality, there's the oceans. It's all there in 17 different goals. It's partnerships, it's health. It's all there as goals. But what happened to people? What happened to people? We got a whole bunch of goals, and they're for people, but what is the role of people and how are we going to get there? These are national goals. These are national goals that are changing the society. But, so there are now, as you will see, 4 different approaches that we talk about as how to get to benefiting people. And one of them is the additive approach. Okay, add 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, but it's each place is different, each person is different. Start with one, do it right, then do another, and then another, and then you'll be taking impact to scale. Now, this additive approach is often advanced by people with passion who say, you've got to do it right. Focus on the individual, focus on the values, remember human rights, remember the environment. And it's often used by groups with minimal resources. They wanted to make a difference, but we don't have much money. So we're going to use the little bit of money and we're going to do someplace for one person. You know, we're going to save that community. It's often used by people who are insecure. They want to help, but they don't want to get too big too fast because they don't really know what they're doing. So they do something and say, that's okay because that's all I can do. Okay, that's the additive approach. It's a good approach. But there's also the other, which is the explosion approach. We have a problem. As this picture shows, we got a flood and it's destroying everything. The community is being torn apart. The community is exploding. And everybody realizes we must respond with an equivalent response to the explosion. Friends, we've just experienced that with COVID. We've had a pandemic. And everybody's saying, somebody, let's do something. Let's get a vaccine. We got to return to normal. The emphasis here is let's have a response, an explosion response to deal with the explosion that has happened, and then we can just return to normal. But if you read chapter 5 of this Just and Lasting Change, you'll say, well, every crisis is an opportunity. And so we can go beyond with an explosion. It's busted the system wide open. We've got rid of the jerks. We've got rid of the problems. Let's rebuild new. That's in the explosion response. Let's have a revolution. Forget this evolution stuff. Let's have a revolution. And then there's the blueprint approach. Well, you know what? I'm the professor. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to figure out a solution. And then when I work this whole solution out, it may take me a while. You have to support me, give me a grant, I'll figure it out. And then we'll take my solution across the region. I'll develop a blueprint. And my blueprint will scale efficiently because once I figured out how all the pieces work, you can now implement it. But there's some real questions. Does the design that this smart team worked out really work everywhere? It depends, usually on whether you have the ability to implement the design. Do you have the resources? Do you have the skills? Do you have the cooperation from the victims or the people being implemented? Now, professionals love the blueprint approach. They make money off of it. That pumps up their ego. It makes them feel like they're professionals. And then there's the biological approach. And as you can see, I've just put the pictures up here of the two editions. The first edition of the Seed Scale book, Just and Lasting Change, which came out in 2002, and then the second edition, which came out in 2016. The basic idea, as illustrated by the covers, is grow the change. Start with a seed. Grow from where you are with what you have, and you will see continually emerging from this seed is growth. It's biological growth. Now, the great thing, folks, is that the biological approach can work with the additive approach. Your skill and your challenge is to learn how to bring all 7 approaches together. The additive approach starts with seeds, right? Add 1, 2, 3. And then you can use those seeds to go to scale. You can use the explosion approach. That explosion has busted your system. So you can evolve anew. You can reassemble all the broken parts and you will get a better future. Or you can also use the blueprint approach that merges expert design, the outside in, with local participation from the people using the top-down enabling framework, and you can grow a blueprint. And in this process, you can address all the SDGs, as we will be seeing in our course. And you can be opening people's choices, as called for by the human development approach, enlarging choices. The great insights from the human development approach is focus on people, focus on their wholeness. The objective of what you're trying to do is to enlarge people's choices, not limit their choices. Pardon me. Human development balances 2 things. The people are always local. Even when aggregated, they're always local. They're local in how they vote, how they live, they're local in what's important. And it balances that with government actions that are always in the aggregate, implemented through policies, using resources. That's what human development's insight was. We're going to balance the local with the government. And it recognizes that the great resource of transformative power is people wanting their collective life to get better. And this is in contrast to the insight of economic development. So out of the United Nations, especially the United Nations Development Program, but also UNICEF and other agencies, first articulated in the idea of human development, later in the idea of the Millennium Development Goals, then the SDGs that I just mentioned, is a school of thought. And in this school of thought, people's use of income is more important than the income. Think about that. Their use of income is more important than the income per se. If you have $10, how you use that $10 is more important than the fact you have $10. If you use it to expand your choices. In expanding your choices, you expand your opportunities. And try to make it to fit to your needs, your place, and your time. And as you expand your choices, the quality of your life will rise. As the quality of your life rises, the quantity of people participating changes. And you enter this feedback loop that we call the revolution of rising expectations. And inside the middle of the feedback loop is your hopes and dreams. And every one of you and every one of your communities has hopes and dreams. So you're starting where you are in your aspirations. And then from your aspirations, you're taking systematic action. And your systematic action is improving the quality of life. And that cool quality of life that is improving is raising the aspirations for everybody. And those rising aspirations are leading to innovation. And yes, at the end, we get rising numbers coupled with rising sophistication. And here's the great thing. Every community has this potential because this potential in this resides in our human energies. And most of our human energies, understandably, are spent on our jobs, our families, and societal demands. But we can break out a small portion of our human energies to be allocated to our collective well-being. And combining the small portions that each of us have creates the larger community change process. And this, my friends, is what we call scaling in ACC603. Okay, it is how we do that. And we're going to learn, as I said at the beginning of this lecture, we're going to learn how to do this, how to take these small portions, how to take these seeds and bring them to scale. Now, when we were talking about economic growth, that is producing economic wealth. In the human development, as we learned at the beginning of the task force that Luke mentioned that was charged by UNICEF in 1992, a long time ago, we're trying to produce human wealth instead of economic wealth. And the production of human wealth is the formation of human capacities. We're creating a human product. And that is called health, education, skills, ethics. This is what these are our capacities. We're going to grow these. And each of you can help your community grow its health, grow its education. And when you grow these capacities, what is produced is a life product of employment, material wealth, political activity, leisure. So economic growth is producing economic wealth. Human development is producing human wealth. And it is in the development of human capacities and the use of these capacities. So to come back to my beginning slide, what is scale? Yes, it's growing bigger, but also it is reaching all. And it is transforming your society. And it's proving the effectiveness of your program. Folks, you're going to look good. You do well in this course, and you'll go out in life and you'll be a professional. The people will say, I need that guy on my team because I can create impact. And then you can claim success for what other people have done because you will do it together and you'll move on. And in this, folks, with seed scale, there's a magical feature that happens inside this biological growth process. It's the importance of equity. Development without equity limits choices. Okay? Human development is the expansion of choices. But if you don't have equity, you're limiting choice. You're not sharing something in common. You're losing the potential to act together. So human development is all about equity. And while it's about individuals, it's about individuals at scale, acting at scale. So in this process that we will be going through of seed scale, there are 4 principles, 7 tasks, 5 criteria. Those of you, you've already mastered that. You've taken ACC601. Now you're in ACC603, where we're going to have 3 dimensions of scale. And here they are. This is the image for your course. Every time you log into Moodle, you're going to see this image. Scale 1, it's stimulating community awareness at the community level. It's a growth of numbers. And scale squared, that's what you're going to be learning how to do now. It's to create self-help centers for action, learning, and experimentation. And as the quality of life improves, that will be stimulating more people to come in. So scale squared is stimulating scale 1. And in scale cubed, you're using the enabling environment. You're learning how to use that enabling environment to create a synthesis of collaboration, adaptive learning, and extension. Because this scale process that we're talking about in this class is a journey. It's not a leap from the present into the future. It's a journey of always developing. No community is developed. Every community, in my opinion, is backward, but every community has the potential to go forward on this journey, engaging the forces now of globalization, just as we're engaging globalization in this class with 10 different countries coming together. We're taking ownership. We're taking ownership. And you have the potential to help your community take ownership of their future. This is not a new process. It's just an articulation of an old process. Okay, this is how humanity has developed for 100,000 years. By working together with what we have, learning, that is experimentation, action learning, and extending this. And every time it's developed, it will look different. It will feel different, especially now in what we call the great acceleration, this world that is moving so fast we can't understand it. But this journey, as we have been on this journey for ever since we began as human beings. But what's exciting to me is that we have come together in this class, and I want to welcome you as the professor in this Future.org and Future.edu journey. And so I've used up pretty much my time, but I just want to say thank you. I'm really looking forward to sharing this class together.
Thank you, Daniel. And as Daniel, yes, we are now at time. I know a few folks have had to start jumping off because they had meeting conflicts. Rosie, I know, is staying on. I know I'm available to stay on, certainly to ask specific questions about housekeeping issues for the class itself, and then also, and if people have specific questions for Daniel, I believe he's available to respond around. And so we're happy to keep the conversation going, but I want everyone to know that if you have to hop off for other reasons, please feel free to do so. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to working with you this semester.
Thanks, folks. See you next week.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye, everyone.